My name is Mason Parker, I'm 34, and I run a multi-million-dollar tech security company in Seattle. 18 years ago, my mother Diana threw me out of our home to focus on her new husband and kids. I was 16 with nothing but $220 and a backpack. Last month, after nearly 2 decades of silence, she suddenly reached out. Not to apologize, but to demand I pay for my half-sibling's college education. What happened when she showed up on my doorstep changed everything. Before I dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to rebuild your life from scratch. I grew up in a middle-class suburb outside Boston. For the first 10 years of my life, it was just me and my mom Diana. We didn't have much, but we had each other. My father left before I was born, and Mom never talked about him much except to say he wasn't ready for responsibility. Despite being a single parent working as a dental hygienist, Mom always made time for me. We'd have movie nights with homemade popcorn, and she never missed my Little League games. I remember how she'd cheer louder than anyone else when I was up to bat, even though I rarely hit the ball. Everything changed when I was 10 and Mom met Roger at her office Christmas party. He was a dentist at a different practice, recently divorced with no kids. Their relationship moved quickly. Within 6 months, Roger was practically living at our house. And by the time I turned 11, they were married. At first, it seemed okay. Roger was polite to me, if a bit distant. He bought me a new bike for my birthday and took us on our first real vacation to Florida. I tried hard to like him because he made my mom happy. She smiled more, laughed more, and seemed less tired all the time. I figured having a complete family might actually be nice. Then came the announcement that they were having a baby. Mom was ecstatic, and Roger transformed from merely pleasant to genuinely excited. They converted our small guest room into a nursery, painting it pale yellow and filling it with stuffed animals and a handcrafted crib Roger's father had made. I was going to be a big brother, and despite some reservations, I was looking forward to it. My half-brother Zach arrived when I was 12. I still remember holding him in the hospital, this tiny bundle with a shock of dark hair like Roger's. Mom looked at the 3 of us together and said, "My perfect family." Something about the way she said it stuck with me. Like I was suddenly an addition to her real family rather than the center of it. A year and a half later, my half-sister Lily was born. By then, the shift in family dynamics was impossible to ignore. Our modest 3-bedroom house felt crowded with 5 people. Roger suggested we move to a bigger place, but money was tight even with both their incomes. That's when the small rejections began accumulating. My baseball trophies that once held pride of place on the mantel were moved to a box in my closet to make room for baby pictures. The annual camping trip that had been our tradition was cancelled because it was too difficult with the babies. When I needed new clothes for school, Mom told me to wait until the next pay period because they just spent a small fortune on professional photos of Zach and Lily. "Mason, you're old enough to understand that babies have needs that come first," she'd say whenever I expressed disappointment. "They're completely dependent on us. You're becoming a young man now." By 14, I was effectively functioning as an unpaid babysitter. Most days after school, I'd watch the kids while Mom and Roger worked. I'd change diapers, prepare snacks, and keep them entertained. I didn't mind helping out, but I noticed my own needs were increasingly ignored. My grades began to slip as I had less time for homework. When I brought home AC in algebra, Mom barely glanced at my report card. "Just try harder next time," she said dismissively while fawning over Zach's preschool finger painting. The summer before high school, I overheard a conversation that crystallized everything. I was supposed to be in bed, but I'd come downstairs for water and heard Mom and Roger in the kitchen. "Mason's getting so moody lately," Mom complained. "Teenagers," Roger sighed. "At least we'll get to do it right with Zach and Lily. Start fresh, you know?" "I know," Mom agreed. "Sometimes I look at them and think about all the mistakes I made with Mason. His father's genes are definitely showing through. I froze in the hallway, glass of water forgotten in my hand. Do it right? Mistakes she made with me? I crept back upstairs feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. High school brought new challenges. I needed a graphing calculator for math class, money for field trips, and eventually I'd need funds for college application fees. Whenever I brought up these expenses, Mom would look stressed. We've got the kids' daycare to pay for, Mason. It's so expensive. Can you find a cheaper option? Meanwhile, Zach was enrolled in private swimming lessons, and Lily had a closet full of frilly dresses she outgrew almost immediately. I wasn't blind to the discrepancy. I got a part-time job bagging groceries after school, which meant I was home less to help with the kids. This created a new source of tension. You're never around anymore, Mom complained one night. We're a family. We all need to pitch in. I'm trying to save for college, I explained. She waved dismissively. Don't worry so much about college right now. Remember your grandparents set up that small fund for you years ago. That was the first I'd heard of any college fund. My grandparents on Mom's side had died when I was very young, but apparently they'd left something for my education. It gave me a small flicker of hope. The distance between me and the rest of the family grew wider. At dinner, conversation revolved around the kids' accomplishments. Zach said a new word today, or Lily took 3 steps on her own. Meanwhile, no one asked about my day or noticed when I made the honor roll despite my struggling grades earlier. The house was covered in photos of Zach and Lily, with only a single family portrait that included me, tucked away in the hallway. I became a ghost in my own home, coming and going with minimal interaction. Roger barely spoke to me except to ask if I'd mowed the lawn or taken out the trash. Mom was so absorbed with the little ones that sometimes she'd seem surprised to see me walk into a room, as if she'd forgotten I lived there. I tried reaching out. I'd ask Mom if we could have lunch together on the weekend, just the two of us like old times. She'd agree enthusiastically but inevitably cancel at the last minute because Lily had a cold or Zach needed new shoes. I made one last attempt to connect during my sophomore year. The father-son camping trip was coming up at school, and though Roger wasn't my father, I thought maybe it could be a chance for us to bond. Roger, there's this camping trip coming up. I started hesitantly at dinner one night. He glanced up from cutting Zach's chicken. It's a father-son thing. I thought maybe we could go. I know you like fishing and they have a lake there. The uncomfortable silence that followed told me everything. Roger looked at Mom, who suddenly became very interested in her plate. I don't think that would be appropriate, Mason, he finally said. I'm not your father. I know that, but... Besides, Mom interrupted. Who would help me with the kids that weekend? You know how they are when Roger's not around. And that was that. I stopped trying after that night. I focused on school, my job, and counting down the days until I could leave for college. The college fund my grandparents had set up became my lighthouse, the promise of escape keeping me going through the darkest nights. My 16th birthday fell on a Tuesday. I didn't expect much, but I thought there'd at least be some acknowledgement. I came downstairs that morning to find the usual chaos of a weekday breakfast. Zach was spilling cereal while Lily banged her sippy cup on her high-chair tray. Morning, I said, hovering in the doorway. Mom barely looked up from wiping Zach's face. Can you grab Lily's pacifier from the living room? I think she left it on the couch. I fetched the pacifier, waiting for someone to say something about my birthday. Nothing came. Roger rushed through with his travel mug of coffee, gave me a distracted nod, kissed the kids and Mom goodbye, and left for work. I tried again at dinner. Still nothing. No cake, no card. Not even a happy birthday. I went to bed that night feeling completely invisible. The next day after school, I finally worked up the courage to ask about the college fund my grandparents had set up. With college applications starting in just over a year, I needed to know what I was working with. I found Mom in the kitchen making mac and cheese for the kids. Mom, remember you mentioned that Grandma and Grandpa set up some kind of college fund for me? I was wondering how much is in there. Her shoulders tensed slightly. Why do you need to know that now? I'm starting to look at colleges. I need to know what's realistic. She stirred the pot more vigorously. We can discuss that later. But I need to start planning. If it's not much, I should apply for more scholarships or maybe look at community college first. Mom set down the wooden spoon with a clatter. Mason, this isn't a good time. When is a good time? You always say that. Roger walked in, immediately sensing the tension. What's going on? Mason's asking about his college fund, Mom said, giving Roger a look I couldn't interpret. Roger cleared his throat. Son, sit down. I hated when he called me son. But I sat at the kitchen table. Mom turned off the stove and joined us, her expression uncomfortable. The college fund. She began, not meeting my eyes. We had to use that money. My stomach dropped. What do you mean, use it? It was for my education. We needed a down payment for the new house. Roger explained. The market was perfect. And this place was too small for all of us. You used my college money for a down payment? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But that was from my grandparents. It was specifically for my education. Technically, it was in my name as the trustee, Mom said defensively. I made the decision I thought was best for the family. What about my future? My voice was rising now. I've been counting on that money. Don't raise your voice, Roger warned. Your mother made a sacrifice for this family. The house benefits everyone, including you. A sacrifice? It wasn't her money to sacrifice. And this house isn't for me, it's for your new family. The words hung in the air. Mom's face flushed with anger. That's enough, she snapped. You've been nothing but difficult lately. All this attitude, staying out late, barely helping with your brother and sister. They're my half-siblings, I corrected. And I'm not their parent. I have my own life. See? This is exactly what I'm talking about, Mom said to Roger, as if I'd just proven her point. Roger leaned forward. Mason, you're becoming a man now. Maybe it's time you started thinking about making your own way. I stared at him. What does that mean? It means, Mom interjected, that your attitude is disrupting this household. We can't live like this anymore. Live like what? I barely exist here anyway. That's it. Mom stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. If you can't be grateful for what we provide and contribute positively to this family, maybe you should find somewhere else to live. The words hit me like a physical blow. You're kicking me out? I'm 16. You're nearly grown, Roger said coolly. Many young men your age start making their own way. Where am I supposed to go? I asked, my voice cracking despite my best efforts. Figure it out, Mom said, her voice hardening. You have 2 weeks. I looked at her, searching for any sign of the mother who used to cheer at my baseball games. There was nothing there but cold determination. You'd throw away your own son for them? I asked quietly. They're children, Mason. You're a burden we can't handle right now. A burden. The word echoed in my head as I pushed away from the table and stumbled upstairs to my room. I collapsed on my bed, trying to process what had just happened. My own mother had called me a burden. She was choosing her new family over me, without hesitation. The next 2 weeks were a blur of desperate planning. I called the few friends whose parents might be willing to take me in. But no one had space or their parents weren't comfortable with the arrangement. I considered calling Child Protective Services but feared being put into foster care for the remaining 2 years of my minority. I spent the nights packing my meager belongings, sorting through 16 years of life to determine what I could fit into a backpack and what I'd have to leave behind. My baseball trophies, childhood books, winter coat that wouldn't fit in the bag but I'd surely need in Boston's cold months, the photo album from before Roger, when Mom still looked at me with pride. The night before I had to leave, I lay awake listening to Zach and Lily through the wall. Zach was going through a dinosaur phase and was roaring while Mom laughed. Lily was practicing counting to 10, her little voice stumbling adorably over 7. The sound of Roger reading them a bedtime story drifted through, his voice animated in a way it never was when speaking to me. I realized I was crying, silent tears tracking down my face and soaking into my pillow. Not just for the loss of my home, but for the mother I'd already lost years ago. Morning came too quickly. I'd barely slept, but adrenaline kept me moving. I shouldered my backpack, took one last look at my room, and headed downstairs. Mom was in the kitchen, packing lunches for the kids. She looked up when I entered, her expression businesslike. "I left an envelope on the counter for you," she said, nodding toward a white envelope. "It's what I can spare." I opened it to find $220 in cash. The amount was so specific that I wondered if she'd calculated exactly how little she could give me without feeling guilty. "Thanks," I said flatly, shoving the money into my pocket. "Do you know where you're going?" she asked, not pausing in her sandwich making. "I'll figure it out." She nodded, still not meeting my eyes. "You can call when you're settled. Let us know you're safe." The hollow concern was almost worse than no concern at all. I waited for her to say something else. Maybe to change her mind or at least show some emotion about sending her firstborn child into the world alone at 16. Nothing came. "Goodbye, Mom," I said finally. She glanced up briefly. "Goodbye, Mason. Take care of yourself." Those were the last words my mother said to me before I walked out the door with nothing but a backpack containing some clothes, my laptop, and $220 to my name. The first day of homelessness was surreal. I wandered through town in a daze, my backpack feeling heavier with each step. Reality hadn't fully set in yet. A blessing that wouldn't last long. I ended up at the public library, where I could at least sit in air conditioning and use the computers to search for options. That night, I supped in a corner booth of a 24-hour diner, buying the cheapest item on the menu every few hours to justify my presence. The waitress, an older woman named Gloria, seemed to understand my situation without me having to explain. She brought me extra toast with my coffee and looked away when I dozed off. "Honey, we close for cleaning between 3 and 4 a.m. she whispered sometime after midnight. "If anyone asks, you were never here, but the back door by the dumpsters doesn't lock properly." That small act of kindness from a stranger was the first bright spot in my new reality. I developed a routine over the next few days. Library during the day, diner at night. Cleaning up in public restrooms. I carefully rationed my money, knowing it wouldn't last long. I was still attending school, though concentration was difficult when basic survival consumed my thoughts. On the 5th day, while using a library computer to search for youth shelters, an elderly man at the next terminal noticed me. "You've been here every day this week," he commented. "School project?" I tensed, preparing to be reported to security or worse, authorities who might put me in the system. "Something like that." He studied me with sharp eyes that missed nothing, taking in my rumpled clothes and the dark circles under my eyes. "I'm Harold Jenkins. I run a computer repair shop on Maple Street. Need a job?" That random encounter changed everything. Mr. Jenkins, as I always called him, gave me not just employment but shelter. The shop had a small storage room in the back with a cot he'd sometimes used during late repair jobs. He offered it to me, temporarily, though either of us ever discussed an end date. "I could use help around the shop," he explained. "I'm getting too old to crawl under desks installing cables." "You know anything about computers?" I did, actually. Technology had always been my escape, and I'd taught myself basic programming and hardware troubleshooting. Mr. Jenkins paid me under the table, a modest amount that covered food and necessities while I continued high school. Working at the shop, I discovered a genuine talent for solving tech problems. While Mr. Jenkins handled the hardware repairs, I quickly became valuable for software issues and virus removal. Customers started asking for me specifically. "You've got a gift, son," Mr. Jenkins told me one evening as we closed up. "Don't waste it." During those first months, I tried repeatedly to contact my mother. I called the house only to have Roger answer and tell me she was unavailable. I sent emails that received brief, impersonal replies. "Glad you're safe. We're all fine here." Once, I even went back to the house, only to have Roger answer the door and refuse to let me see her. "This isn't a good time, Mason," he said, blocking the entrance. "The kids are napping." Through neighborhood gossip that reached Mr. Jenkins, I learned my mother had told everyone I'd run away. She'd painted herself as the heartbroken parent of a troubled teen who couldn't be controlled. The betrayal cut deep, adding another layer of pain to process. My first Christmas alone was particularly difficult. Mr. Jenkins invited me to join him and his daughter's family, and though they were kind, I couldn't help but think about Zach and Lily opening presents without me. Did they even remember their older brother? Did Mom ever mention me? School became my focus. The one area of my life where I could exert control. My grades improved dramatically as I channeled my pain into academic achievement. Teachers who had previously seen me as an average, unremarkable student now took notice of my dedication. My computer science teacher, Ms. Ramirez, became a particular advocate, encouraging me to apply for scholarships. "You have potential, Mason," she told me. "Don't let your circumstances define your future." Through it all, I struggled with the emotional fallout of abandonment. Nightmares plagued me, usually variations of the same theme. Standing outside my former home, looking through windows at my family happily living without me, I developed trust issues, keeping people at arm's length for fear they too would eventually discard me. Mr. Jenkins noticed. "Not everyone leaves, son," he said one day out of nowhere. "Some people stay." He proved his point by staying. He became the closest thing to family I had, teaching me not just about computers but about resilience. He'd fought in Vietnam, lost his wife to cancer, and rebuilt his life multiple times. "Life breaks everyone," he liked to say. "But afterward, many are stronger at the broken places." By the end of my junior year, I had saved enough to buy a decent used car, giving me freedom and eliminating the long bus commutes between school and work. I continued living in the back room of the shop, converting it into a small studio with a mini fridge and hot plate. I graduated high school with honors, an achievement that felt hollow without family in the audience. Mr. Jenkins cheered loudly enough for 10 people when they called my name, and Ms. Ramirez hugged me after the ceremony, but I couldn't help scanning the crowd for my mother's face. She wasn't there. Later that night, I found a card in my mailbox at the shop. Inside was a generic graduation card signed Mom, Roger, Zach, and Lily. The kids' signatures were clearly written by my mother. There was no personal message, no invitation to reconnect. Not even a phone number. Just a card that could have been sent to a distant acquaintance. I pinned it to my wall anyway. It was the only acknowledgement I had that I still existed in their world at all. My acceptance to the state university came with a substantial scholarship, though not enough to cover all expenses. Mr. Jenkins insisted on helping with the remainder. "Consider it an investment," he said gruffly when I protested. "You can pay me back by not screwing up." I moved into a cramped dorm room that September, determined to make the most of this opportunity. Computer science was my natural choice of major. Building on the skills I developed at the repair shop, I supplemented my scholarship by working 3 jobs: mornings at a campus coffee shop, weekends at the university IT help desk, and evenings delivering pizza. Between work and classes, sleep became a luxury. I survived on energy drinks and determination, often studying until 3 a.m. before waking for a 5 a.m. shift. The punishing schedule left little time for socialization, which suited my still healing emotional state. I wasn't there to party or make friends, I was there to build a future. Sophomore year brought a turning point when I met Tyler Chin in my data structures class. Unlike me, Tyler came from privilege, his parents both successful physicians. But we connected over a shared obsession with coding and system architecture. "Dude, you're wasting your talent fixing other people's crappy laptops," he told me one night as we pulled an all-nighter for a project. "We should build something." Tyler had ideas and connections. I had technical skills and a desperate hunger to succeed. We began developing apps in our spare time, working from his spacious off-campus apartment that became our unofficial headquarters. Our first creation was a simple tool to help students organize research citations. We offered it for free, building a small but dedicated user base. The next was a secure messaging platform that caught the attention of a local startup incubator. Suddenly, people were taking notice of our work. By junior year, we had a decision to make. A small angel investor had offered $50,000 to develop our ideas further, but it would mean dropping out to pursue our business full-time. "It's risky," I acknowledged during the late-night discussion with Tyler. "Everything worth doing is," he replied. "What's the worst that happens? We fail and go back to school. I'm in if you are." The decision wasn't as simple for me. College represented security, a conventional path to stability I'd fought hard to access. Walking away felt dangerously close to gambling with my future. But something in me recognized this as a rare opportunity that might not come again. I dropped out the next day. Mr. Jenkins was surprisingly supportive when I called to tell him. "Some education happens outside classrooms," he said. "Just don't forget an old man when you're a billionaire." We named our company Secure Stream Solutions and rented a tiny office that was little more than a closet with internet access. Those early days were a blur of 18-hour work sessions fueled by cheap ramen and ambition. We slept on office floors, showered at the gym, and coded until our vision blurred. Our big break came when we developed security software that protected against a new type of data breach that had been plaguing financial institutions. We reached out to banks with cold calls and emails, most of which went unanswered. But one small credit union took a chance on us, implementing our solution across their network. When they publicly credited our software with stopping a sophisticated cyber attack attempt, larger institutions came calling. Suddenly, we weren't begging for meetings. We were turning down clients we couldn't yet handle with our tiny team. Our first $1 million contract came 3 years after dropping out. I remember staring at the signed document in disbelief. Then looking at Tyler. "Is this really happening?" I asked. "Told you," he grinned. "And this is just the beginning." He was right. We expanded rapidly, hiring developers and security experts, moving to larger offices with actual windows and furniture that hadn't been salvaged from curbs. I bought my first new car, then my first apartment with a view of the Seattle skyline. After years of precarious living, the security of a home that couldn't be taken away was intoxicating. Financial success didn't immediately heal emotional wounds, however. As our company profile rose, I began seeing a therapist, Dr. Rivera, to address the abandonment issues that still affected my ability to form relationships. Trust came slowly, if at all. I maintained a small circle of close friends, Tyler chief among them, but romantic relationships inevitably crumbled under the weight of my guardedness. "You're waiting for everyone to leave," Dr. Rivera observed during one session. "So you never fully arrive yourself." Working through those issues took years. I learned to recognize patterns of self-sabotage. The ways I tested people's loyalty or kept them at a distance to protect myself from potential rejection. Slowly, I built a chosen family of loyal friends who proved, through consistency and presence, that not everyone leaves. By my 30th birthday, SecureStream had become an industry leader in cybersecurity solutions. We employed over 100 people and had offices in 3 cities. My personal net worth had reached 8 figures, a fact that still seemed surreal to the boy who had once rationed dollars at a 24-hour diner. I bought Mr. Jenkins a new shop in a better location and set up a retirement fund that ensured he'd never have to work again, though he refused to stop completely. Idle hands are the devil's workshop, he insisted, still taking on small repair jobs despite not needing the income. I maintained my modest lifestyle despite my growing wealth, living in a beautiful but not ostentatious home in Seattle's Queen Anne neighborhood. The house had more bedrooms than I needed, a fact that occasionally struck me as ironic given my childhood eviction from a home that supposedly couldn't accommodate me. I never attempted to contact my mother again after that impersonal graduation card. The pain had dulled over time, transforming from an acute stab to a chronic ache that flared occasionally but no longer dominated my thoughts. I had built a good life, successful beyond what anyone might have predicted for a homeless teenager. I had proven Roger wrong in every possible way. That would have to be enough. Or so I thought. Until a notification appeared on my phone that would upend my carefully constructed piece. A Facebook message from Diana Parker. The notification came on a Tuesday afternoon during a meeting about a potential acquisition. My phone buzzed with the familiar sound of a Facebook message, an app one rarely used except to check in with old college friends. I ignored it until the meeting ended, then glanced down to see a name I never expected, Diana Parker. My mother. After 18 years of silence, her name on my screen felt like a hallucination. I stared at it for several minutes before opening the message, my heart hammering in my chest. Mason, I just read about you in Business Insider. I always knew you would do amazing things. So proud of my son. Would love to reconnect. Mom. The casual tone, as if we'd simply lost touch rather than her having thrown me out, was jarring. The article she referenced had been published the previous week. A profile focusing on SecureStream's innovative approach to protecting healthcare data. It had mentioned my unconventional path to success but contained no details about my estrangement from family. I closed the app without responding, needing time to process the sudden contact. That evening, I poured myself a scotch and read the message again, trying to decipher the motivation behind it. The timing, immediately after a high-profile article mentioning my success, seemed suspicious. After 3 days of deliberation, I responded with a neutral message. Thank you for reaching out. It's been a long time. Her reply came almost instantly, as if she'd been waiting by her phone. Too long. I've missed you so much, Mason. I think about you every day. The words rang hollow given the years of silence. If she'd thought of me daily, she'd had over 6,000 opportunities to reach out before my name appeared in Business Insider. Our exchange continued over the next few days, her messages growing increasingly personal. She shared updates about my half-siblings, Zach and Lily, now 18 and 17 respectively. Zach was apparently a talented baseball player looking at sports scholarships, while Lily excelled academically and dreamed of attending an Ivy League school. They've always known about their big brother, she claimed. I've shown them your baby pictures. The conversation shifted noticeably after about a week. Diana began mentioning the unfortunate reality that college costs had skyrocketed since my day. She explained that while they had started college funds for both children, market downturns and unexpected expenses had depleted their savings. It breaks my heart that I might not be able to give them the education they deserve, she wrote. Especially Lily. She's so bright, just like you were. The direction became clear with her next message. I know this is a lot to ask after so much time apart, but I was wondering if you might consider helping your siblings with their education? Family is family, after all. I'm sure you understand the importance of education given your own success. I took screenshots of the entire conversation and sent them to Dr. Rivera, requesting an emergency session. We met the following day in her comfortable office overlooking Pike Place Market. What are you feeling right now? she asked after I'd explained the situation. Angry. Manipulated. I paused, digging deeper. And something else. Maybe hurt that this is why she reached out. Not to apologize or make amends, but because she wants money. Do you feel any obligation to help? The question gave me pause. I don't know these kids. They're technically my half-siblings. But they're strangers to me. That's not what I asked. Dr. Rivera nodded gently. I asked if you feel obligated. I considered this. Part of me thinks I should feel obligated because that's what family does. But another part remembers that she didn't act like family when I needed her most. We spent the hour untangling these complex emotions. Dr. Rivera neither encouraged me to help nor advised against it, but helped me examine my own motivations and boundaries. Whatever you decide, she said as our session ended, make sure it's a choice that honors your worth, not one that seeks to finally earn love that should have been freely given. I discussed the situation with Tyler over drinks that weekend. Unlike Dr. Rivera's measured approach, Tyler's reaction was unequivocal. Are you kidding me? He exploded after reading the messages. She throws you out as a kid, ghosts you for 2 decades, then slides into your DMs asking for cash? That's some next-level audacity. They are my half-siblings, I said, playing devil's advocate against my own instincts. It's not their fault. Then she and Roger should have thought about college funds before blowing through yours. Tyler countered. This is classic manipulation, Mason. You deserve better. Still uncertain, I decided to do some research. Using resources available through my company's background check protocols, I discreetly investigated my mother and Roger's financial situation. What I discovered was revealing. They weren't destitute by any means. Roger still practiced dentistry, and my mother managed his office. They owned their home outright and had taken luxury cruises in the past few years. While not wealthy, they were solidly middle class with the means to have saved for their children's education had they prioritized it. Further digging revealed that Zach's baseball talents weren't quite as promising as Diana had suggested. He was on the high school team but not a standout player likely to receive sports scholarships. Lily, however, did appear to be academically gifted based on public records of academic competitions and honor roll listings. This information helped clarify my thinking. My mother wasn't desperate. She was opportunistic. She hadn't reached out because she'd finally recognized the gravity of abandoning her son. She'd reached out because that son had become a convenient solution to a financial challenge. After 2 weeks of messages with increasing mentions of college costs, Diana finally made her specific request: $400,000 to cover full 4-year educations for both Zach and Lily at prestigious universities. I didn't immediately refuse. Instead, I suggested something that surprised even me: a face-to-face meeting. I think after 18 years, this conversation should happen in person, I wrote. I'd like to meet Zach and Lily as well. Diana readily agreed, perhaps sensing that an in-person appeal would be more effective. We arranged for them to visit my home in Seattle the following weekend. As the day approached, I vacillated between anxiety and estranged, detached curiosity. I wasn't the desperate 16-year-old seeking approval anymore. I was a successful adult who had built a life without these people. Yet some part of me still craved closure, or perhaps validation, from the woman who had once been my entire world. Whatever happens, Tyler said during a final pep talk the night before, remember that you're the one doing them a favor by even taking this meeting. Not the other way around. I prepared my home for visitors, stocked the refrigerator with beverages a teenager might enjoy, and waited for the family that had once discarded me to arrive on my doorstep. Saturday morning arrived with perfect Seattle weather. A rare sunny day with views of Mount Rainier from my back deck. I'd been up since dawn, too anxious to sleep, reviewing the mental script I'd prepared with Dr. Rivera's help. I would be polite but firm, listen more than speak, and maintain emotional boundaries regardless of provocation. The doorbell rang at precisely 11 a.m. I took a deep breath, smoothed my shirt, and opened the door to face my past. Diana looked older, of course, with strands of gray in her once uniformly brown hair and lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 18 years ago. Roger stood slightly behind her, his posture stiff and uncomfortable. And beside them were two young adults who could only be Zach and Lily, looking awkward and confused. "Mason," Diana breathed, her eyes widening as she took me in. "You look so grown up." Something about the obvious statement, the fact that of course I'd grown up in the nearly 2 decades since she'd last seen me, almost made me laugh. Instead, I nodded. "Diana." "Roger. Please come in." If my use of her first name bothered her, Diana didn't show it. She stepped forward as if to hug me, but I subtly shifted my posture to extend my hand instead. A flash of hurt crossed her face as she accepted the handshake. "These are your brother and sister," she said, motioning to the teenagers. "Zach and Lily." Zach, tall and lanky with Roger's features, gave me an uncertain wave. Lily, who had Diana's eyes but lighter hair, offered a tentative smile. "Hi," she said quietly. "This is weird, huh?" The honest acknowledgement broke some of the tension, and I found myself smiling back. "Definitely weird. Nice to meet you both." I led them into the house, watching as they took in the open-concept living area with its wall of windows overlooking Elliott Bay. Roger's eyes darted around, clearly assessing the value of everything from the furniture to the artwork. "Beautiful home," Diana commented, her tone suggesting more than simple admiration. "You've done very well for yourself." "Thank you," I said neutrally. "Can I get anyone something to drink?" "I have coffee, tea, soda, water." After serving beverages, we settled in the living room. An uncomfortable silence descended until Diana broke it with forced cheerfulness. "So, tell us about your company. The article said you're revolutionizing cybersecurity?" I gave them the simplified version of Secure Stream's work, watching their reactions. Diana and Roger nodded with exaggerated interest, while Zach looked bored. Only Lily seemed genuinely engaged, asking intelligent questions about encryption and data protection. "That's actually really cool," she said when I explained our work protecting medical records. "I'm thinking about studying computer science too." "Lily's very bright," Diana interjected quickly. "Top of her class. MIT is her dream school." "Mom," Lily murmured, looking embarrassed. "What?" "I'm proud of you," Diana insisted before turning back to me. "She gets her brains from you, I think. Same aptitude for technology." The transparent attempt to establish connection through Lily made me uncomfortable. I suggested a tour of the house, partly to change the subject and partly to observe their interactions more closely. As we moved through the rooms, Roger became increasingly talkative, commenting on features and materials in a way that felt like mental price calculation. "Is this marble imported? Must have cost a fortune," he remarked in the kitchen, running his hand over the countertop. Diana was more subtle but equally focused on indicators of wealth. "Oh, that view must never get old," she sighed, gazing out at the water. "I bet the sunset is spectacular from here." Only Zach and Lily behaved naturally, with Zach gravitating toward the game room and Lily examining my bookshelves with genuine interest. "You have a first edition Asimov?" she exclaimed, carefully touching the spine of a prized volume. "That's amazing!" After the tour, I suggested we have lunch on the deck. The catered spread I'd arranged seemed to further impress Diana and Roger, who exchanged meaningful glances at the quality of the food. "Mason has been telling us about his business," Diana said to the teenagers as we ate. "Isn't it wonderful what your brother has accomplished?" "Half-brother," Roger corrected automatically, then looked uncomfortable when Diana shot him a warning look. "Actually," Lily said, putting down her fork, "why haven't we met before? Mom always said you were busy with your career." "But that doesn't explain 18 years of no contact." The direct question created immediate tension. Diana laughed nervously. Lily, this isn't the time for heavy conversations. We're just getting reacquainted. Seems like a fair question, I said mildly. What exactly have you told them about me, Diana? Roger cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss the real reason for our visit. Roger! Diana hissed. What? He replied defensively. We didn't fly all the way to Seattle for small talk. Zach looked between his parents, confusion evident. What's he talking about, Mom? Diana composed herself with visible effort. Mason, perhaps you and I could speak privately for a moment? I nodded, leading her to my home office while Roger remained with the teenagers. Once the door closed behind us, Diana's demeanor shifted subtly, becoming more intimate and nostalgic. It's so good to see you, she said, touching my arm. I've missed you every day. Have you? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. I haven't heard from you in 18 years. I know. And that's my fault. I should have reached out sooner. She sighed dramatically. I was so hurt when you left. The revisionist history was breathtaking. When I left? You threw me out, Diana. I was 16. She waved her hand dismissively. We were going through a rough patch. You were difficult, and we needed space. I never thought you'd stay away so long. I stared at her, amazed by the narrative she'd constructed. You told me I had 2 weeks to get out. You called me a burden. I'm sure I never used that word, she countered. You were always so sensitive. Taking things the wrong way. The gaslighting was so blatant it almost impressed me. 18 years of therapy had prepared me for this moment, allowing me to observe her tactics without being drawn into her reality distortion. What have you told Zach and Lily about me? I asked, redirecting the conversation. Diana hesitated, calculating. That you were focused on your career and education. That you needed space from family responsibilities. So you lied. I protected them from painful truths, she corrected. What good would it do for them to know their mother and brother had a falling out? Half-brother. I echoed Roger's earlier correction with deliberate irony. Diana ignored this. Mason. I know we have things to work through, but right now I'm concerned about the children's future. College is so expensive these days. And that's why you contacted me after all this time? Because you need money? She had the grace to look slightly ashamed. I contacted you because I'm proud of what you've accomplished and want to reconnect with my son. The college situation is just coincidental timing. Right, I said flatly. Coincidental that you reached out immediately after an article mentioned my financial success, not after any of the previous press about the company. Diana's expression hardened slightly. I don't appreciate what you're implying. I'm trying to rebuild our relationship. By asking for $400,000 in your second message? They're your siblings. She insisted. Family takes care of family. The hypocrisy was staggering. Where was that family obligation when you put a 16-year-old out on the street? That's ancient history, Mason. I'm talking about now. Zach and Lily deserve the best education possible. She leaned forward, her voice softening. Isn't that what your grandparents wanted when they set up your college fund? The mention of the money she'd appropriated for the house down payment was the final straw. I stood up, indicating our private conversation was over. Let's rejoin the others, I said firmly. Back on the deck, Roger was telling the teenagers about a patient's dental emergency, though neither seemed particularly engaged. Diana resumed her seat with forced brightness. Everything okay? Roger asked, clearly reading the tension. Just catching up. Diana replied smoothly. Mason, why don't you tell the kids about your college experience? They're both starting applications soon. Actually, I said, addressing Zach and Lily directly, I dropped out of college to start my company. But before that, I had to figure out how to pay for it myself. Since the college fund my grandparents left me was used for a house down payment. Diana's sharp intake of breath was audible. Lily frowned, looking between us. What college fund? Mason. Diana warned. That's not appropriate conversation. What isn't? I asked innocently. The fact that grandparents I never knew left money for my education that was used for your new house instead? Or the fact that I was homeless at 16 because you decided your new family didn't have room for me? Roger stood abruptly. I think we should go. Wait, Lily said, her expression troubled. What does he mean, homeless at 16? Mom, you said Mason left for college early on a special program. He's exaggerating, Diana said dismissively. We had a disagreement, and he chose to leave. I didn't choose anything, I said calmly. You gave me 2 weeks to get out. I was 16, working at a computer repair shop and sleeping in the storage room because I had nowhere else to go. The color drained from Lily's face. Zach, who had been relatively disengaged, was now fully attentive, his expression shocked. That's not true, Diana insisted, her voice rising. Tell them. Roger. Roger looked uncomfortable. It was a complicated situation. Was it? I asked. Because I remember it being very simple. You called me a burden. Said you needed to focus on your real family, and told me to leave. Lily stood up, her hands shaking. Is that true? Did you throw him out? Diana reached for her daughter's arm. Lily. You don't understand. Mason was difficult, destructive. He was disrupting the household. I was 16. I repeated. A child legally. Your child. You were old enough to make your own way. Roger interjected. And clearly it worked out for you. Despite your best efforts. I noted. This is ridiculous. Diana snapped, her pleasant facade cracking. We came here to discuss the children's education, not rehash ancient grievances. Is that why we came here? Lily asked, her voice small. For money? Diana hesitated too long before answering. Of course not, sweetie. We came to reconnect with your brother. Half-brother. Roger corrected again, automatically. After 18 years? Lily pressed. Right after he was in a magazine about successful entrepreneurs? Diana's expression hardened. That's enough, Lily. I turned to my half-sister, seeing her distress. To answer your question directly, yes. Your mother contacted me after 18 years of no communication to ask for $400,000 for your and Zach's college education. Mason! Diana exclaimed. That's a private family matter. Are we family? I asked quietly. Because you made it very clear we weren't when you chose your new children over me. The word chose hung in the air like a thunderclap. Lily's eyes filled with tears as the implications sank in. You chose us over him? She whispered to her mother. How could you do that? I didn't. Diana insisted desperately. Mason is twisting everything. He ran away, and we tried to find him. That's a lie, I said flatly. You never looked for me. You told everyone I ran away to cover the fact that you threw me out. You owe your success to the values I instilled in you. Diana declared, changing tactics. I made you strong, independent. Look at what you've accomplished. Something in me snapped at the audacity of her taking credit for my success after abandoning me. I owe my success to the elderly man who let me sleep in his shop's storage room and believed in me when my own mother didn't. I owe it to the teachers who helped me get scholarships because I had no parents to co-sign loans. I owe it to the friends who became my family because you decided I wasn't worth keeping. My voice had risen despite my best intentions to remain calm. In the silence that followed, I heard a small sob and turned to see Lily with tears streaming down her face. I never knew, she said, looking at her mother with devastation. You let me believe he abandoned us, that he didn't want a relationship. But it was you who abandoned him. Diana reached for her daughter. Lily, please. Lily stepped back, shaking her head. I need some air. She turned and walked into the house. Zach, who had remained silent throughout the confrontation, finally spoke. Is it true? Did you really kick him out at 16? Diana looked to Roger for support, but he was suddenly very interested in his water glass. Left alone to answer, she faltered. It wasn't like that. He's not telling the whole story. What's the whole story then? Zach pressed. Diana had no answer that wouldn't incriminate her further. I looked at my half-brother, seeing confusion and the beginning of understanding in his eyes. I never knew you and Lily growing up. That wasn't my choice. I would have liked to be your brother. Zach nodded slowly, processing. I think I'm going to check on Lily. He too disappeared into the house. Left alone with Diana and Roger, the pretense of a happy reunion completely shattered. I finally said what I'd been waiting 18 years to say. I needed you, and you threw me away. Now you need me, and you expect me to forget that happened. I've built a good life without you. I don't need your approval, or your love anymore. I certainly don't owe you money. Diana's face hardened into something ugly and familiar, the expression I'd seen the day she told me to leave. After everything I sacrificed for you, this is how you repay me? By turning my own children against me? You did that yourself, I replied calmly. By lying to them all these years. We should go, Roger said, standing and taking Diana's arm. This was clearly a mistake. Diana shook him off. Not without the kids. Give them a minute, I suggested. They've just had their understanding of their family history completely upended. Don't tell me how to parent my children, Diana snapped. Unlike you, I replied evenly. I would never claim to know how to parent anyone. The barb hit its mark. Diana stalked into the house in search of Zach and Lily, Roger trailing behind with an uncomfortable backward glance at me. I remained on the deck, listening to the muffled sounds of argument from inside. After a few minutes, the front door slammed. From my vantage point, I watched Diana and Roger walk to their rental car alone. The teenagers had stayed behind. I found Zach and Lily in the living room, sitting in stunned silence. Lily's eyes were red from crying, while Zach stared out the window at their parents' departing car. They actually left without us, Lily said, disbelief in her voice. Mom just said we could find our own way back to the hotel when we're done being dramatic. I'm sorry, I offered, unsure what else to say. This isn't how I imagined today would go. Not your fault, Zach replied, turning from the window. We're the ones who should be apologizing. We had no idea about any of this. I sat across from them, the three of us forming an awkward triangle of newly discovered truths. You couldn't have known. You were babies when it happened. Still, Lily insisted. I feel terrible. All these years, I had this image of you as this selfish person who abandoned our family. Mom would mention you occasionally, always with this sad voice like you'd broken her heart by choosing your career over family. Meanwhile, I was working 3 jobs to put myself through college, I said without bitterness. Living in a dorm room I could only afford because of scholarships and an elderly mentor who helped me. Mr. Jenkins? Lily asked. You mentioned him earlier. I nodded, surprised she'd caught the reference. Harold Jenkins. He gave me a job at his computer repair shop when I had nothing. Let me sleep in the back room. Taught me about computers, but more importantly, about resilience. Is he still around? Zach asked. Yes, I smiled. Still fixing computers at 84, though he doesn't need to financially. Says it keeps his mind sharp. He's the closest thing to family I've had all these years. The conversation flowed more naturally after that. They asked questions about my life after being forced out, and I answered honestly without sugarcoating the difficulties or exaggerating the hardships. In turn, I asked about their lives and interests. Getting to know these young adults who shared my blood but had been strangers until today. Lily, I discovered, was indeed brilliant with technology. teaching herself to code at 14 and developing web applications for local businesses. Zach was less academically inclined but had a natural talent for photography and filmmaking, documenting nature and urban landscapes with an artistic eye either of our parents possessed. "I wish we'd known you growing up," Lily said wistfully. "I always wanted a big brother who got me." "Mom and Dad try, but they don't understand why I'd rather build a computer than go shopping. Our house has always been more about appearances than substance," Zach added, a perceptiveness in his observation that surprised me. "Everything's about what the neighbors think, what Dad's dental partners think. It's exhausting." As the afternoon stretched into evening, I ordered dinner delivery, and we continued talking, years of absent connection condensing into hours of conversation. They shared funny stories from their childhood, and I told them about building Secure Stream from nothing, the failures and victories along the way. Eventually, the conversation circled back to the reason for their parents' visit. "So what happens with college?" Zach asked bluntly. "I'm guessing you're not giving Mom and Dad $400,000 after all this." "No," I confirmed. "I'm not giving them anything." "But that doesn't mean I can't help you and Lily." They exchanged uncertain glances. "We don't expect anything," Lily said quickly. "Especially now that we know the truth." "I know you don't," I assured them. "But I'd like to. Not because of obligation or guilt, but because I choose to. There's a big difference." Over the next hour, I outlined a proposal. I would set up separate educational trust funds for each of them, accessible only for legitimate educational expenses. The money would never pass through Diana or Roger's hands. Additionally, I offered Lily an internship at Secure Stream for the summer if she was interested in exploring computer science further. "What about living arrangements?" Lily asked hesitantly. "I'm not sure I can go back home after all this." "Not right away, anyway. You're both welcome to stay here tonight," I offered. "As for longer term, we can figure that out together. I have plenty of space." "Mom's going to freak," Zach predicted. "Probably," I agreed. "But you're 17 and 18. Old enough to make some of your own decisions." They decided to stay the night, and I showed them to guest rooms. Later, I heard Lily on the phone with Diana, her voice alternating between defensive and assertive in a way that reminded me of myself at her age. When she emerged from her room, her expression was a mixture of stress and relief. "Mom says I'm being manipulated and ungrateful," she reported. "Dad got on the phone and threatened to cut me off financially if I don't return to the hotel tonight." "What did you tell them?" I asked. "Then I'm staying here tonight, and we'll talk tomorrow when everyone's calmer." She sighed heavily. "I've never stood up to them like that before. It gets easier with practice," I told her, earning a small smile. The next morning over breakfast, we continued discussing options. Lily was adamant about not returning to Boston immediately, wanting time to process everything she'd learned. Zach was more conflicted, torn between loyalty to his parents and his new understanding of their actions. "I can't just cut them off," he explained. "They're still my parents, even if what they did to you was wrong. And you shouldn't cut them off," I agreed. "Your relationship with them is separate from mine. You can love them and still hold them accountable." After careful consideration, we developed a plan. Lily would stay with me in Seattle for the summer, working as an intern at Secure Stream and preparing for college applications. Zach would return to Boston but with clearer boundaries and the knowledge that he had options if home became untenable. The college funds would be established regardless of where they chose to live, giving them freedom to make educational choices without financial dependence on Diana and Roger. It wasn't about buying their loyalty or replacing their parents in their lives. It was about giving them the options I never had at their age. When Diana and Roger arrived later that day to collect their children, as Diana phrased it in her text, the dynamic had fundamentally shifted. Zach and Lily presented a united front, calmly explaining their decisions without seeking permission. Diana's reaction was predictably volatile, oscillating between tearful pleas about family loyalty and sharp accusations that I was stealing her children just as they were becoming adults. "Nobody's stealing anything," Lily said firmly. "I'm making my own choice. I want to get to know my brother and explore career options in tech. This internship is an incredible opportunity. And I'm coming home," Zach added. "But things need to change. No more lies about Mason or our family history." Roger, surprisingly, was the first to recognize the futility of fighting their decision. "Diana," he said quietly, "they're not kids anymore. We can't force them." It wasn't a perfect resolution. Diana left angry and hurt, unable to acknowledge her role in creating the situation. Roger shook my hand stiffly. A small gesture of recognition, if not quite respect. Zach departed with his parents, promising to stay in touch daily with both me and Lily. Over the following months, our newly formed connection strengthened. Lily flourished at SecureStream, her natural aptitude for coding complemented by a creativity that impressed even our most senior developers. Zach reported gradual improvements at home as Diana and Roger adjusted to their children's newfound independence, and the truth being out in the open. By Christmas, we had created a fragile new normal. Zach flew out to Seattle for the holidays, and we celebrated together with Mr. Jenkins and a few close friends who had become my chosen family over the years. Diana and Roger declined my diplomatic invitation, not yet ready to bridge the chasm their actions had created. One evening during that holiday week, as we sat around the fireplace playing board games and sharing stories, I looked at the scene before me, Lily laughing with Tyler over an inside joke they'd developed during her internship. Zach showing Mr. Jenkins his latest photography portfolio. My friends treating my newly discovered siblings as if they'd always been part of our circle. The family I had now wasn't the one I was born into, but one built through choice, truth, and mutual respect. The wound of abandonment would always be part of my story, but it no longer defined me. I had learned that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting or even reconciliation. Sometimes, it simply means releasing the expectation that the past could have been different. The greatest lesson from my journey wasn't about success or revenge or even justice. It was about boundaries versus barriers. Boundaries protect us while allowing connection. Barriers isolate us in the name of protection. For years, I'd built barriers, keeping everyone at a safe distance. Now I was learning to replace them with boundaries, allowing genuine relationships while still honoring my worth. Diana may never fully acknowledge the harm she caused or take responsibility for her choices. That reality had been hard to accept. But I no longer needed her validation to know my own value. The 16-year-old boy who once cried himself to sleep believing he wasn't worthy of his mother's love had grown into a man who understood that her inability to love him properly was her limitation, not his failing. As midnight approached and we prepared to toast the new year, Lily nudged me. "Thank you," she said simply. "Not just for the internship or college or letting me stay here. Thank you for not letting what happened to you define how you treat us. Breaking cycles is hard work," I told her, "but it's the most important work we can do." When the clock struck 12, we raised our glasses to new beginnings and second chances, to families chosen and found, and to the transformative power of truth. The journey hadn't been easy, but standing there surrounded by people who chose to be in my life, I knew I wouldn't change a single step that led me to this moment of genuine belonging. Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes the most painful rejections lead us to where we truly belong. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and rediscovery. Thank you for listening, and remember, your worth isn't determined by those who couldn't see it, but by the strength you find in honoring it yourself.